Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the master student at the American University, and I'll be presenting on informed consent. Informed consent, patient's knowledge of the legislations in signing before surgery. So, how do I move next? Oh no. So, the abstract. The effectiveness of the informed consent process in satisfying the patient's need is an essential yet often ignored element in the evaluation of hospital services. It is observed that even after signing a consent form, many patients still do not understand basic information about the risks, benefits, and alternatives of their proposed treatment options. Informed consent is a process by which the treating healthcare provider discloses appropriate information to a competent patient so that the patient may make a voluntary choice to accept or refuse treatment. An informed consent can be said to have been given based upon a clear appreciation and understanding of the facts, implication, and consequences of an action. The key words here are informed consent, the patient's knowledge, legal implication, surgery. Informed consent, the introduction. Informed consent is a process of communication between a patient and physician that results in the patient's authorization or agreement to undergo a specific medical or surgical intervention. That is according to the American Medical Association 2006. For both ethical and legal reasons, patients must be given enough information before they decide to undergo any surgery, and this informed consent must be documented in writing. Informed consent is an autonomous action by a subject or patient that authorizes a professional either to involve the subject in research or to initiate a medical plan for the patient. Autonomy of patients is an important issue in the health service area. It is the fundamental mechanism whereby the physician informs the patient about the options for the diagnosis and treatment of the patient's illness. It is generally accepted that complete informed consent includes a decision or a discussion of the following elements. 1. The nature of the decision, which is a procedure, reasonable alternatives to the proposed intervention, the relevant risks, benefits, and uncertainty related to each alternative. It originates from the legal and ethical rights the patient has to direct what happens, to direct what happens to his or her body, and from the ethical duty of the physician to involve the patient in healthcare decisions. Furthermore, autonomy of patients is an important issue in the health service area. Informed consent is not just a form to be signed as a hospital formality, but a process which ensures respect for persons through provision of thoughtful consent for an option to decide on the best possible treatment in decision processes so that the patient can make a rational voluntary decision regarding what he or she wants to be done. That's according to Jehan et al. 2014. The important goal of informed consent is that the patient should have an opportunity to be an informed participant in the healthcare decisions, so it acts as a safeguard to ensure the preservation of individual rights. (2001) Competence is the patient's competency and physically to grant consent. Disclosure, as the surgeon discloses to the patient all the efforts of surgery, both probable and possible. Understanding, as the patient fully understood the proposed surgery. Voluntariness, as the patient agreed to the surgery voluntarily without pressure. As the patient consented to the surgery in light of the above. The law of informed consent is supposed to protect the principle of patient's authority. The process of deciding, patient psychology during consent. The process of making an explicit decision by the patient on the surgeon recommendation is importantly placed as the third and culminating element of the informed consent process. In making their decisions about surgery, patients should appreciate that present conditions and actions have future consequences. The surgeon's important role in the development of understanding includes correcting errors in the patient's information, helping to augment the patient's fund of knowledge, and helping patients grasp the nature and likelihood of the future consequences, attendance on each of the therapeutic choices available to them. In response to patients who desire only a small role in decision-making but want surgical management of their problem, the surgeon should nonetheless provide an explanation of the surgical procedure by reviewing the major issues such as contents of the consent form. The physician should make a recommendation only after the patient has developed evaluative understanding without fear of bringing undue influence to bear on the patient's autonomy. Failure by surgeons to provide patients with the full range of their knowledge for fear of violating a patient's autonomy could mean that the patient does not become genuinely informed and ultimately defeats the high-minded principle the surgeon is seeking to protect the patient. Legal aspects of informed consent. It is the surgeon's legal responsibility to obtain informed consent from the surgical patient for a surgical procedure. This statement does not mean the surgeon is also responsible for having the surgical patient sign a consent form. The surgeon must, however, provide the information necessary to allow the patient to make an informed decision about the proposed surgical intervention. Regarding informed consent, the courts have ruled as follows. There is an independent and legally protected physician-patient relationship. Medical judgment and expertise must be exercised when deciding what and how much a patient should know to make an informed decision. Interference or meddling in the physician-patient relationship is disruptive and potentially harmful to the patient. Based on case law, therefore, the legal responsibility for obtaining informed consent for a surgical procedure remains solely with the surgeon's domain. That's according to the American Law of Registered Nurses Journal, 2015. A signed consent form does not prove legally that a surgeon provides the patient with adequate information to make an informed decision. Instead, a signed consent form is one piece of written evidence that may be used in an informed consent dispute to validate that indeed communication occurred between the surgeon and patient. It is not, however, sufficient in itself to prove that the patient's consent was legally informed. Extent of the surgeon's influence. The surgeon's commendation have a proper role in the informed consent process. Most patients value their surgeon's recommendation and customarily give them considerable weight in their own decision-making process about whether to accept surgical management of their condition. Surgeons should adhere to quantitative description whenever possible in the early steps of the informed consent process and then help the patient to evaluate this evaluation in the steps concerned with cognitive and evaluative understanding. Roles of a nurse in obtaining informed consent. Informed consent for a surgery or any medical procedure is essential in order to avoid allegations of assault and battery and other possible legal accusations. In the case of surgery, a perioperative nurse is therefore responsible for ensuring that the consent form is signed by the appropriate person, e.g. the patient, the guardian, the agent under a durable attorney for health care in case of emergency. The only role is as a witness to the person putting his or her signature on the form and dating the form. The forms provide a space for signature as the witness and the date as well. Document the signature was obtained, including the date and time in the nursing notes. If the patient seems confused about the procedure or asks additional questions, the nurse's role is to advocate for the patient, instruct the patient not to sign the form until the requested information is obtained, notify the appropriate surgeon, and document same. Explain the nursing care that will take place after the surgery, what medications to be administered, and any other aspect of nursing care. Provide comfort and support to the patient and his family or guardian while waiting for the surgery to begin. That's according to Nancy, 2007. Patients who undergo or refuse surgery. A competent patient's right to refuse a surgery is an important principle in the informed consent process. Respect for patients' autonomy and self-determination requires that decisions to consent or to refuse surgery originates freely from the patient as an autonomous agent. Not only must consent be given freely, but it may also be freely withdrawn at any time. The granting of autonomy to refuse consent to a recommended surgery requires healthcare providers to accept the free choice of each person, even if that choice seems inappropriate, foolish, or hazardous. The canons of medical ethics and common courtesy are violated if the surgeon vocalizes disappointment, anger, or threatens to refuse future treatment towards the patient for not affirming trust in the consulting surgeon. That's according to American Association 2013. The surgeon's first response to refusal of surgery should be to review with the patient his understanding of the condition, the nature of the surgical procedure, and its benefits and risks. The patient's cognitive understanding may be incomplete, and the patient may reconsider when more complete understanding has been developed. The surgeon's second response should be to explore the patient's evaluative understanding or particular concern should be possible mistrust of physicians, perhaps based on some prior experience, pressing obligations, or emotional factors like anxiety, depression, or fear. One very helpful response to refusal
Hello, Yetunde.
surgery is yes?
Yes, you had 3 more minutes to conclude your presentation. Do it fast.
Okay. The goal should be to identify mutually acceptable criteria for evaluating the non-surgical management and for reconsidering it. Should the patient be declined to accept surgery or any other invasive management as the option, the surgeon should propose a trial of medical management and agree with the patient on the conditions under which the surgeon initiates surgical intervention. The barriers to effective informed consent. These are the barriers: lack of clinician time, confusion among clinicians about when informed consent is needed, physicians concerned about giving too much information, perception of patients that the informed consent form is just a legal release for the doctor or hospital to proceed. Patients unaware that they can refuse the procedure or delay the decision, patients' language and cultural issues, special patient circumstances and human factors, poor quality of consent form and related educational materials, patients' misunderstanding of information on the informed consent, and clinicians' inability to detect patients' lack of comprehension. What's needed on the informed consent? We have the name and signature of the patient, the name of the hospital, name of procedure, name of all practitioners performing the procedure, and individual significant tasks if more than one practitioner, the risk, benefits, alternative procedures and treatment and their risk, date and time consent is obtained, statement that the procedure was explained to the patient, signature of persons witnessing the consent, name and signature of the person who explained the procedure to the patient. Timing of informed consent. For consent to be valid, the patient must be competent to take the particular decision, have received sufficient information to make a decision, not be acting under duress. Informed consent remains valid for an indefinite period, allowing advance consent to be sought providing the patient's condition has not changed or new information concerning the procedure, intervention, treatment has not come to light in the intervening period. It is a good practice if consent was obtained in advance to explanation of the surgery. Consent should begin with a brief explanation of the planned operation, including the aesthetic involved. It is wise to describe what the patient may expect to experience during surgery if under a local anesthesia. Medical jargon should be avoided. Sufficient information to make should also include an explanation of the risks and benefits of involved, alternative treatment, the risk benefit of doing nothing.
Yetunde.
Yes?
Yeah, time is up.
Yes.
Your time up. You had time up.
Okay.
Your session is over, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Yetunde.